Hello, hello, hello. This is Misty Magdalena Grace with the new and improved version of Healthy and Wealthy and Wise, where we talk about spirituality, psychedelics, plant medicine, microdosing, and really that journey within to finding your best innate wisdom, to your best health, your best wealth through all sorts of inner child healing, trauma release, grief recovery, overcoming addictions, and working with the mind, the body, and spirit. So go ahead, leave a review, subscribe, download. We look forward to your feedback. Thanks for tuning in today. Hey, happy September 30th. At the time of this show, this live recording, we are finishing the month of September, which if you haven't been paying attention, you know that this has been Suicide and Recovery Awareness Month, a focus that is near and dear to my heart. We've been focusing on this since 2020. And if you don't know me, if this is your first time tuning in, I'm Magdalena Grace. I am a practitioner of healing of the mental health through physical and spiritual cleansing. And this podcast has been going for over 4 years now. And so I am super excited to mix it up today. We've had a little different, what do you want to call it? Like perspectives with every single guest. And today's guest is a perspective that we haven't really focused on, even though we've probably had about 12 episodes now. So if you get a chance, go back if you're just tuning into this one. And if you see value in this show today, please hit the share button. Sharing is caring. Just may save a life today by sharing this episode. So Raquel, I'm so excited to have you. We're going to dive right in. And I know that you yourself are a suicide attempt survivor, you in your early 20s. And so now you've turned that, into inspiration and into helping others, kids of all ages, especially college kids, which is right around that 20, 21-year-old mark. And so, and then I know you've also mentioned about inner child healing and how this whole journey that you've been on since then has helped you heal at some really powerful and profound levels. So I'd love for you to dive right in and share your story with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. And my apologies if you hear some strange background noise. I'm actually at the office, so I do have a full-time corporate job, and they're doing something in the studio. So my apologies. But yes, so for me with my story, it's interesting because when you asked me how old I was when I, tried to take my life by suicide, I don't remember what age. I think I was maybe 20, 21. It's still very much like a fog to me, just that whole period. I do know that I was in my 4th year. I was struggling with major clinical depression. I was in bed a lot. I'm a very social person, an extrovert. And here I was someone that did not want to leave my apartment. And at the time, I did a really good job of hiding it, if you will. I had roommates that worked during the day or had classes during the day, and I kind of would skip classes and just be in bed. So I was able to hide it, but there was just finally kind of took its toll on me. And one evening I just decided, you know what, this is too much for me. I'm tired. I'm exhausted of like putting up a facade of trying to be perfect, of just trying to be everything to everyone. And in that headspace, you really do believe that you're better off gone and that everybody else is better off without you gone, with you gone. Like you really don't think about people in your life that it's going to affect. Like you really are in a dark place. And so I attempted, and obviously it did not work out the way I had planned it, but I do believe that there's always a plan. And so I'm here today to share my story and to try to help others in the sense of like, hey, I was in that place, but I've been able to overcome. And now I'm in a fantastic place where I love life. Obviously, life isn't perfect. There are ups and downs, but I'm in a space where I know I was spared for a reason. And, there's a lot of pressure that goes along with that too, right? Where you think, okay, why was I spared? I have to do something incredible if I'm still on this earth. And I think for the longest time, I tried not to think about that. And then as of late, just having this relationship with my own kids and speaking to kids of all ages, I realized, oh, this is my purpose. Like, this is why I was spared. I'm here to tell the tale in a way that is not so heavy. That's in a way that, like, it's part of my journey. It's something that happened. I don't take it in a way that it defines my life or defines who I am. It's more of, it's an experience that I went through. I'm learning from it. I'm going to therapy for the first time since that happened. I finally had started, and I'm 49. So it took all this time for me to finally kind of talk about it and to heal that inner child. And so it's really fantastic to see that there's a reason why I'm so, I guess, I gravitate towards that age group. And I have found that, like, it's to heal that inner child of mine. Like, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing what I couldn't do for myself, or, I'm doing it hopefully to help others. So it's kind of it's a cool place to be in. Finally. I think before I was a little bit kind of like, I don't know why would this happen. Now I know why it did.
I love it. Yeah, in a lot of ways, it mirrors my experience and our previous guests. And I'm going to bring back the quote. It's the quote of our Lotus Stone Foundation, is Mark Twain, the two most important days are the day you are born and then the day you find out why. Now, not saying that everyone who survives suicide has to be an advocate or a speaker or whatever,
Right.
It's all perfect. It's all good. And at the same time, it sounds like you've had that, I call it the wounded healer journey, where
Yes.
you really figure out your wounds, and you don't have to go and become a quote unquote healer. That term gets thrown around a lot, but you don't have to go out just by being a friend to someone, listening to someone, speaking to kids of all ages. Like you're talking about sharing your story on a podcast, you're sharing your wounds and helping others heal as a result by so doing. Because we've talked about this all month also, I'm going to guess, and I'll throw this back at as a statement, but also a question. Most of the people, myself included, because I've had suicidal thoughts, no attempts, but definitely a lot of times wanted to die and thought about it. There's such a stigma. Even though I was hosting Suicide Awareness Month podcast, I never said, oh, by the way, I've thought about, until I want to say like maybe 2 or 3 years in, and then slowly, giving myself permission to be more open and vulnerable publicly. It sounds like you've maybe had something similar. Did you feel like the stigma was holding you back from sharing your story?
Oh, absolutely. And what's kind of a little bit insane to some people is the first time I shared my story was on the LinkedIn platform. And for those of you that know LinkedIn, it's more of a business platform. I didn't share it on Facebook, Instagram. It was LinkedIn. But the reason why I shared it on LinkedIn is because it was the one platform that I had built a community of people that I trusted, and they had followed me for years. And I felt like everybody kept kind of commenting on how I have this great life and I'm always so happy and I love life. And it was Suicide Awareness Month, and it was 2018. And one of my colleagues who was a leader in the mortgage space, because I work for a mortgage company, they were like, as leaders, we have to break the stigma and change the narrative. And I thought, well, what better way to try to do that is on a platform like LinkedIn with someone who everybody thinks has this like perfect, happy life. And so I chose to just pull my phone out. I pressed record and I just said, hey, I have something that I need to share with all of you. And I just spoke my truth. And it was like 6 minutes. I did break down a little bit, but I can't tell you how well it was received, because when I pressed post, I had a little mini anxiety attack because I thought, what did I just do? I just shared something so personal and so vulnerable on LinkedIn. Like, I'm going to get bashed. It was the opposite. I can't tell you how many people in positions that, pretty high up there, that were messaging me separately saying, you are so brave, so courageous for being so vulnerable and transparent. Thank you. And then I had people sharing their stories. To this day, I still have connections of mine that still talk about, their family members that are struggling, or if they had lost someone to suicide, they'll let me know. And I just realized in that moment that people need vulnerability. They need to know that you're a human being that experiences different things, that we're not perfect. And that literally changed the trajectory of my life, with sharing it on LinkedIn in 2018. It sounds kind of odd, but it just showed me that, okay, business people are people too. Like just because you're a CEO or something doesn't mean that you're, you go unscathed in life.
1,000%. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it is important now more and more as we, depending on what you believe in. I've talked about this age of Aquarius, the divine feminine. There's an awakening on the planet. And I believe part of that masculine, that what I call the wounded masculine, the overachiever, I gotta wear a mask, I gotta be perfect, that's going away. And you said some things that I want to touch on, and maybe
Mhm.
this will, if it feels natural and does
Okay.
transition to inner child work, I'd like to maybe go there. But you are, the author of this topic. I'm just intuiting and knowing my own
Yes.
journey. You said you were all things to all people. You thought you needed to be perfect. I call that my
Mhm.
my people pleasing,
Yes.
shadow and wound. And so you'd say yes, all things, all people, couldn't say no. So you didn't take care of your needs first. It sounded like. Would you
Hmm.
agree?
I agree. Yes. I was everything to everybody in my family and everybody else. It's about myself.
And yeah, and as you go through your inner child healing, did you figure out and kind of pinpoint, where that belief started, or any
Yeah.
insights on that?
I did. And obviously, out of respect to my family and my parents, I don't want to go too much into it.
Of course.
But fortunately, it did have to do a lot with the way I was parented and just my environment. And, my parents, love them dearly, but they just didn't get it really. Now we're going to family therapy as well. So I've been able to kind of express things that they didn't realize were affecting me the way they did. For instance, I mean, one of the biggest things that I realized that had affected me, but at the time, like I didn't know, was that my parents kind of just went along with the rest of their lives after the next day when I was brought home. Like my dad went back to work. My mom kind of was like, well, if your dad's going back to work, then it must not be a big deal. And so unfortunately, it took me just recently to realize that, when your own parents don't really take it seriously or don't, put it to the forefront or make you feel like you're the most important person, it really affects the way you look at yourself and your self-worth and your value. And so I've come to realize that a lot of the way I react or a lot of things that trigger me or things in relationships and in business have been a lot because of that. And once again, I love them dearly and they have apologized. We have had our moments where they're like, we just didn't know. And I think that's the hardest part is like, you think your parents should know everything, so it's hard because, you don't want to put blame on just them, but at the same time, it's like you do have to recognize that, family dynamics do really play a part in all of us as kids. So as a mother, I think I am doing my best to do things differently because of that situation and how how it affected me and how it essentially, was trauma. And so the last thing I want to do is have my own kids kind of have their trauma. So it's a lot, but it is kind of like a hard thing to talk about because, you don't, it's your parents, but
And
it's
I
the
can
reality
relate that.
too.
Oh, 1,000%. And I think this, our mission with our foundation is to break the generational cycles of addiction and suicide and be the
Yeah.
change we want to see in the world and have these open conversations. I love that you're doing family therapy. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I
With
don't
my
know.
siblings and my parents, the five of us. Yeah, it is hard. Let me tell you, it is not an easy thing. I dread every time we get on that call. I think we all do. I mean, you're getting into the mud, but there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, well, that's so cool. You just reminded me. There's a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's actually why we call our foundation the Lotus Throne. He talked about the lotus flower, being the ultimate transformative flower example, and in Eastern traditions. But we've lived our life by this philosophy for the past 4 years. You have this death of the old, you have the rebirth, and you have the renewal. That's what the lotus flower represents. And
Mhm.
his quote, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher who I believe he died last year, he said, "No mud no lotus. So you can't have the lotus flower without the, I'm going to just say it, the really shitty, gross mud
Oh, I didn't realize
that
that.
you, and I believe, at least this is my belief, that I chose my family of origin to be born through some of the shittiest. Again, they did the best they could,
Yes, yes.
1000%, that baby boomer generation, or, depending on how I know you gave your
Yeah,
age, a
yeah, the
lot of,
baby boomers, yes.
and my parents were dead by the time I was 42. So,
Mm,
truly, I was finally awakened to what was going on in my body. The body keeps the score. Yeah, the neglect wound, even if the parents were most amazing and the perfect family. I've studied Gabor Mate's The Wisdom of Trauma and some of his trauma-informed therapy work. It's still our baby, our minds are forming. And if you don't get supported, or your bottle change, or your diaper change or bottle fast enough,
mhm.
you right away start to form micro traumas in your being, and that's unavoidable,
Yeah,
no matter what. So it's not our quote unquote parents' fault. It's just, I feel like it's part of our journey to unlearn, some of
yeah.
these, and so that we can share our story and help other people.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's just like, so even with my own kids, kind of understanding where I'm coming from and knowing my parents, their grandparents, and seeing how I'm trying to do better and be better because of that, I think at least that'll help them if they do have kids. So yeah, it's the generational cycles. Like, it's not going to end from one generation to the next, but if we can kind of slowly start making that shift, then I feel like it'll definitely make a difference. And so I do feel like I'm someone that is making the shift. And I love that my kids see that and recognize that, because I'm not the perfect parent either. I've done some crappy things in the past, but I also have to recognize that I was kind of conditioned to act a certain way and be a certain way. So I can't also sit here and blame myself too much either, right? Obviously, we all have to hold ourselves accountable for certain things, but at the same time, a lot of times we're like defaulting to a behavior because that's what we know. And so that's kind of what I was doing for years. And then when I started realizing what I was doing and how it was affecting my children, I'm like, I got to do better, and I got to, yeah. And so I'm trying, and like I said, they see that, and because of that, there's more trust there. There's more respect. There's more of a compassion and empathy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know it wasn't until my father's deathbed where he actually admitted he made mistakes. And
Mm,
because, for that generation, your parents too, that's
that's
why I
hard.
said this is incredible
Yeah.
what you're doing, is to even go and even admit you need or want therapy, is asking for help, which was definitely a sign of weakness that, well, a lot of us were conditioned that you don't talk about, what you did wrong. You just Pollyanna, focus on the positive,
Mm-hmm.
or just sweep it under the rug and the carpet. And then that's where resentment and frustration and bitterness and a lot of these wounds just continue to fester. And so I'm proud of you for owning
Thank
it
you.
and sharing that with
Yeah.
we've
My mom
we've
still, yeah, I will tell you, my mom doesn't understand why she kind of doesn't get it, but she's also Mexican. So not only is she a baby boomer, but she's a different culture. And so for
ah,
her, like, she knows I'm on podcasts and I talk about these things because I tell her, but she doesn't really understand what is the benefit of it per se. So I don't, but I've learned that that's my mom, and that shouldn't deter me from doing what feels right for me by sharing and being open. Because I think in the past I would have wanted to please my parents in every way possible and been like, oh, okay, you don't understand this, then I shouldn't be doing it. And now I have to really trust my own intuition and my gut, and all of it is just telling me that I need to keep sharing and keep talking about it. And if it makes them feel uncomfortable or certain people feel uncomfortable, then it's them, not me. So yeah, like, there is a lot that goes into it, right?
well, like you said, a lot of it's been conditioned in us to just stay quiet and not to speak up, especially women, so I can,
Yeah,
it's definitely, I'm guessing, cultural for your mom, but it's also very much
yeah,
a female thing, is just keep your mouth shut and not speak your truth. developed an autoimmune disease in my throat, and it ran in the women in my family. So I get this on the mental, physical, spiritual,
Wow.
and emotional level. It makes so much sense to me now.
Yeah.
But when at first it was the truth will set you free, but at first it'll piss you off. So I had to work through a lot of that pissed off stage
Yeah,
to
you
get to
do
the
get
point.
pissed off. Yeah, I went through that stage too, believe me.
Well, let's talk about, you said you talk to kids of all ages,
Uh-huh.
especially college kids. So, first of all, what are you seeing in that age range about talking about mental health, about suicide?
Yeah, so the conversations that I have with these kids is it's about anything. Like, so for me, it was at the time that I started the YouTube channel Raq the Boat. It was during COVID, and I just wanted to hear what these kids were feeling and what they had to say, because you already knew that they were struggling with mental health, issues because of social media, and my kids had already known kids that had taken their lives, and then you add COVID on top of it, and they're isolated, and they're at home and they don't really have anybody to talk to because they're at home just with their parents. And I thought, you know what, I want to hear what these kids have to say and what they're feeling, because it's the only way we're going to be able to help them, and the only way I will be able to move forward in a way that is healthy, right? Because these are our kids, they're our future. And if we just ignore them in a way that they don't feel validated or seen or heard, then it's a detriment to mankind, right? So I thought, I already have a platform. Let me just see if they'll just have conversations with me. And now I have 67 conversations, and I've had some really just, conversations about Minecraft and about video games because they were younger, and no big deal. But it showed that an adult can have a conversation with a child, right? Like, you can bridge that gap if you just are curious and you're asking questions. And then one of the more serious conversations I had was with Pepper. And Pepper, when they were on my show, they were actually Natasha and a she, and they were 12 years old, and I knew the mom through just the industry but had never met in person. And Pepper just felt like they trusted me, and they were on my show like 5 times. I had actually met them in person because they happened to be in Virginia, and so I made it a point and was out, like, they were visiting their friend. I took them out to lunch, so we've done it twice. And it came to the point where Pepper was now 16, so 4 years later, and Pepper was now identifying as a he and going through that transformation. Well, they reached out to me, or he reached out to me, because they was she, they, now he. So he reached out to me and said, I want to be on your podcast. And I said, are you sure? Because you've been on it before and we've never talked about this. And he's like, no, I want to be on your podcast. But we never discussed like, oh, we're going to talk about your transformation or what you're going through. I just wanted them, I wanted him to feel like he can just talk to me about anything. And he did end up talking about some of the transformation. But what was so beautiful about it was that the way he brought it up was, and this is where I'm like, you got to have empathy and compassion. You can't be judgy in any way, because he would just simply said, I struggled with my mental health. I wasn't confident. Like, I was just didn't like who I am. And then suddenly he's like, I love who I am. I have confidence. I'm happy. I have family that support me. I mean, you could see just the difference in him. And, at the end of the conversation, because I record them and then let, the parent know, like, hey, this is the conversation. Are you okay with it? They were like, we're fine with it. And I'm like, are you sure you want to, like, this is, there's people out there that are going to have an opinion. He's like, no, I'm okay. I have no like shame in sharing who I am and what I've been through. And so I remember putting out on YouTube, and I always do like a snippet to promote it on like Instagram and LinkedIn to go over to YouTube. And I did do a disclaimer, but I will tell you this. It was the first time that I realized, like, I had to question myself, Raquel, what's the main reason why you're doing the show? And I was like, it's to create a space of non-judgment, a safe space where these kids can share anything and everything that they want. And so I thought, if I truly am doing that, then I have to share his story. And so be it what people think, you know, but I did a disclaimer of like, hey, I'm not here to start any kind of like rhetoric. Like, this is about this child who felt safe enough to share his story. So, like, do not come at it with any judgment. Have empathy and compassion for him as a human being. And I will tell you, not one single person said anything negative. Everybody was like super supportive. Both his parents reshared that post on their LinkedIn, saying how proud of their son they were. So that was like a turning point for me, where I was like, all right, I'm going all in with this. Like, I'm not censoring what these kids have to say either. Like, that's not why I did this. And that's kind of where Raq the Boat like ended up being. And then I started Raq the Career, which I wanted to help college students, you know, potentially find an internship or find a career using my platform too. So that's kind of where it's just youth. It's just empowering our youth in any way I can. And if it means to help them find a job, then that's empowering them. If it means to just have a conversation about video games, that's empowering them. There's so many different levels of doing it. You know, it doesn't have to be some grandiose thing that you do. A simple conversation where you're just asking questions is empowering them.
Oh, I love that. And
Yeah.
if you can send me the links to people, or so people can access those.
Okay.
You said you have a YouTube channel for both Raq the Boat and Raq the Career?
Raq the Career is just like pop-up LinkedIn lives, but Raq the Boat has been on YouTube for several years now. So it's RAQ the Boat. Yeah, and like I said, there's 67 conversations on there, and some of them are repeat. I also have a kid who's on the spectrum, who's been on the show 6 or 7 times, and he's become family. And same thing, his parents are like, what you've done for him and his self-confidence, and just like, even in his commencement speech online, he gave me a thank you, because he's a boy genius. He graduated from high school, and like at age 13, he's already pre-med at University of Washington, and he's not even 15. And the fact that he like thanked me in his speech was like, it brought tears to my eyes. But it just goes to show you that you really can make an impact on our youth. And so that's what I'm just trying to set an example so that other people can hopefully follow and do the same for our youth, because it will make a big difference in the way that these kids grow up and navigate the world and lead. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
I know how important it is, and thank you for bringing up the trans conversation, because I had a trans guest, I can't remember now if it was 3 years ago.
Okay.
We haven't been able to hit all of the different targets inside of the Suicide Awareness Month, because there, unfortunately, there are so many.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen it, I recommend. There's a brand new documentary out on Netflix called Will and Harper.
Thanks for reminding me, because I saw the trailer for it somewhere, and I was like, oh, I definitely have to watch this, because it looks incredible. I love that Will Ferrell did that. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really beautiful, and kind of shows, you know, obviously this man is more in his 60s, I think, man becoming, you know, woman, Harper being the woman name that they chose. And so it's beautiful just to show, and I can't even imagine, like, I feel like I came out of the spiritual broom closet last year, officially, because I was wanting to die, because I wasn't living my authentic truth. At the end of the day, it was, for sure, part of it was about purpose, but when you feel inauthentic and you don't have community where you can share openly and feel non-judgment, you know, in a safe space, of course you start to feel outcasted. You start to believe those lies that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, blah, 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 blah. All the things that I believe every human can actually have an experience of. But when you have just some of those extra stigmas stacked against you, oh my gosh. And it's really touching. So I'm glad I got to mention that here, since we, you know, we're talking about this. It's pretty profound. So thank you for the work that you do. I will be sharing Raquel's, I did find it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
I will share it inside of the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't done anything in a while, because, you know, it is a lot of work as well. And, but I do want to continue doing it. And I know I had a teen empowerment event that was live here in San Diego last year, or last year. Yeah. And it was kind of a branch off of what I was doing on YouTube. I wanted to do something more in person. And so I had several speakers fly in, and it was all volunteer. They knew they were coming in just to give back. And it was incredible. And most of these kids that attended were from other nonprofits that underrepresented communities. And so I want to continue to be able to do that. But once again, that's a full-time job, and I already have a full-time job, but I'm not giving up on my dream of having Raq the Boat just really be a youth empowerment movement, if you will.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, because do you work with people, or are you open to talking to someone who's less than 14, who's a preteen?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think the youngest was 6 years old that I've had on Raq the Boat, but I'm also open to talking to kids, even if it has nothing to do with the show. I've had friends that have been like, hey, will you just have a conversation with my child? And, just kind of off the record, just to be someone that they can talk to. And so I've even done that as well. And I mean, I'll make it very clear, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor. It really is just about connecting on just a level of emotional level, and a level of just, I resonate with what these kids are saying, and they know that there's relatability, and it's all about experience. And I think sometimes at the end of the day, the kids feel more comfortable talking to someone that is not maybe a counselor therapist, because, there could be something around that too. So if they just know it's just somebody that wants to listen to what they have to say, it's just different. And so I think that's why it's worked too.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That is great. I know we're kind of wrapping it up here, but
Yes.
do you have any other advice for kids, teens, college students, or maybe even the parents of those?
Yeah, a lot of it is the parents having to maybe realize that we have to parent a little bit different too, because our kids are different. Our kids are different than when we were kids because of social media and technology. So just as much as they're evolving pretty quickly because of the way our world is, we have to evolve with it as well as parents. We kind of have to also be open to doing things a little bit differently, and to creating those spaces for our kids to be able to come to us and be open. Because I think, once again, it's like that generational thing of well, I'm the parent, so I know better, and they just need to listen to me and don't ask questions. What I say goes. And that's not the case anymore. I feel like we have to approach things differently now, and it does take work. I mean, for me, it took work to get to a place where I'm at with my kids. And a lot of it was just listening to them and asking what their needs were and their wants were, which I know, once again, what do you mean you're going to ask your child what they need or what they want? Well, you know what? Guess what? Sometimes you do need to ask what they need from you and what they want from you. So yeah, it's just understanding that times are changing,
Well, I think that's humanity 101. It's not even, have you asked your partner what they need or want? Have you asked your friend? A lot of times we go in any conversation, life, you said you work in corporate America. I mean, a lot of times you are the follower, your input doesn't matter as much. There's all of this. It's just still that kind of, like I said earlier, a little bit of that masculine wound of an agenda, instead of just having a cup of coffee and just connecting at the heart and sharing, what you really need or want in life, or what you're hoping to create, vision, dreams, and really tune in with figuring out what it is that you really want. A lot of us didn't really figure that out. And unfortunately, that's what I think causes a lot of where you start to people please and just do what other people want because you feel like your needs don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely a learning curve and process, but I think it's worth it when, I have a 23 and 20-year-old, and I have a great relationship with them, and my ex-husband does too. And we co-parent, and they actually like us, and we actually do things together as a family. And we actually enjoy each other's company and, have fun. For my 49th birthday, my son flew out from Virginia, and we jumped out of a plane together and went skydiving. So to have that experience with him was just the best birthday gift I could have ever, asked for. But it's because it took a lot of work to get to that place. You know, it wasn't easy. Like the divorce was tough on him, all of those things, but I didn't give up, you know, like I was like, I'm going to do the work because I know it's going to be worth it in the end. And now I'm in a place where I'm like, the work has been worth it. Like, so that's what I try to tell parents, like, hey, it doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen.
Wonderful. Well, I have just one more question for you. Before
Yes.
we go to that, I'm going to have a quick word from our sponsor. So don't go away. Healthy and Wealthy and Wise is proudly sponsored by the Soul Vine, your number one go-to source for ayahuasca microdosing. This ayahuasca is legal. It is the Cappy vine. There is no DMT extract or molecule as a part of it, and it can and will transform your life from the inside out. Supporting the Shipibo tribe from South America, this is my go-to source for healing. Learn more at microdosingforhealth.com. All right. So as we start to wrap it up here, and I love that, you know, you talked about the kids, but then also talking about the parents. So I hope kids and parents that are listening, or, you know, if you can refer it to mom and dad, or if you have a child who you feel like you haven't been connected to, maybe share this episode with them and have an open conversation. Like Raquel said, it's scary, hence rocking the boat, right? I think that's a great title. You might feel like you're rocking the boat, or as I always say, stirring the pot, stirring the cauldron.
But for branding purposes, Rock the Boat was perfect because of my name.
Oh my gosh. 1,010%. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's my hope today, for those of you who are watching, to share this with someone that you know maybe has a child that they're struggling with, or a child that is struggling in general, and feel free to reach out. Where can people find you, Raquel, besides, of course, YouTube and LinkedIn? Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I'm on Instagram as well, but those are the best. You can just DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I'll always respond.
What is your handle on Instagram?
It's my name, so it's at Raquel.Borras.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So if you Google me, I know it sounds so like pretentious, but if you Google me, you'll find me.
Awesome. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you. I've already thought of at least one parent that I'd love to refer to you to have an honest conversation. And I always ask my clients, sorry. Oh my gosh. Can you tell I'm having a case of the Mondays? I always ask my guests for the first time, since this is your first time being on my show, I'm curious, when you hear the phrase healthy and wealthy and wise, which is the name of my podcast, what does that mean to you?
Well, it means that you're encompassing everything that we are as human, that we need to, you know, take care of, and in order to be able to be whole, if you will.
Beautiful.
Yeah, the health, the wealth, and the wisdom is definitely an important aspect of it, for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for making time on this final day of Suicide and Recovery Awareness Month. Just some final reminders, since this is our last episode specific to this topic in October. We'll go back to regular programming, and so you'll be hearing from me soon. My next show is going to be entitled After the Ecstasy, the Laundry: how to create daily habits and ultimately live through life after, you know, big shifts or big plant medicine journeys or big spiritual awakenings, and how to embody that in your daily life. And if you wanted to go back and check out all of our shows, please go to magdalenagrace.com, specifically to Suicide and Recovery Awareness Month. And if you are in alignment with this mission and vision of the Lotus Throne, which, you know, you can always go to lotusthronesanctuary.org, where we're wanting to break the stigma, break these generational cycles, curses, whatever you want to call them, and create a new lineage, a new generation on this new planet Earth that is being birthed as we speak. And if you want to make a donation of any kind, there's no such thing as too small. Even if you have $5, you could save a life. You could make an impact, as 2025 is our year of fully serving clients who've lost family members to suicide or addiction related deaths. So sending you all lots of love, and until our next episode, here's to your best health, your best wealth, by trusting that best divine innate wisdom within. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, download, leave a 5-star rating or review, and also please refer this to a friend you know who may benefit from this inspirational message. We hope to see you again. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel or join my Facebook community. And if you are looking to manifest your best health, your best wealth by trusting your best wisdom within, please go to my website, www.microdosingforhealth.com. Again, www.microdosingforhealth.com, to quiet your mind, get into your heart, heal